recording. Just bear with me, everybody, so that I can get all of this technology part up and going, and then I can start. And I just want to thank you while I'm doing two things at once. Ooh, I see someone in the waiting room. Okay. It's somebody very special joining us from another galaxy far, far away. And I'm just about to start broadcasting this on Facebook. So that's what I'm doing right now, is where you can't see what I'm seeing on my screen, which is the go live on Facebook thing. Okay. Somebody needs to sing something while I'm doing this really quickly. I need some support here, people. Come on. What's a good song to sing today? Because you know what today is? It's the 11th of Cheshvan. Does anybody know why this is a special day?
No.
It's the yahrzeit of our mother. It's Jewish Mother's Day.
Oh.
It's Rachel's yahrzeit.
Oh.
Okay, thanks for bearing with me. I'm the only one of all of the Aquarian Minyan teachers who operates their own Zoom and broadcasts it, and it's just distracting. So I'm sorry you've had to wait a couple of minutes. And now I'm actually going to start, and I'm going to say thank you and welcome to everyone here. Big shout out to Amy Joy Wachtel, dialing it in from the East Coast. And you're going to hear something very special about turtles, by the way. So hang on there, because what does turtles have to do with Scorpio? We're going to find out. So where are we? What's going on? Last week, everybody who was here with me last week, thanks for coming back to sort of come together and finish out this whole thought of what we're doing in this quadrant of the Jewish year. And for people who are just joining us for the first time, what we're doing in this series of teachings that started in the month of Nissan, which is the month of Aries, which is the month we started the Aquarian Minyan Yeshiva, I thought I would jump in and start teaching about the Jewish months of the year. So I did. I started doing that. And lo and behold, we're already at the holy month of Cheshvan, and that is the sign of Scorpio. Mazal Akrav, that's the scorpion. It's literally the scorpion, okay? And just look at that word and remember, we're gonna talk about this word later a little bit, especially having to do with this letter, the final letter. What does that bet or vet have to do with this really special month? It's a secretly special month because people are like, oh my God, I'm so over the Chagim, I'm so burnt out or exhausted or whatever it is after the entire month of Tishrei. Then there's a feeling of quiet in the month of Cheshvan because there's no outward holidays, but there are inward holidays, really, really, really important things that happen during Cheshvan. Today, as I said, today on the Hebrew calendar is the 11th day of Cheshvan, and that is the yahrzeit of Rachel, our matriarch Rachel, whose boys we are talking about. Here we are, I just want to show you this, okay? We are in this part of the zodiac right now. We talked about this last week. We are in the northwest quadrant of the zodiac. The zodiac is a 360-degree circle divided into 12 individual areas, which are 30 degrees each, and each one of them is associated with a zodiac sign, one of the 12 zodiac signs, one of the 12 tribes, and of course the months of the year. So we started over here back in March with Aries, which is Yehuda, and the month of Nissan. Then last month, or actually last week, last month was Tishrei, but last week we finally thanks to Mercury retrograde, caught up with ourselves and covered the month of Tishrei, which is Ephraim and the zodiac sign of Libra. But now that we're on this side of the zodiac, meaning that we finished the entire bottom part of the zodiac, now we're going above from the 7th house cusp, which is the far west. West is where the tribe of Ephraim was located. And the Ephraim, of course, is one of the 4 tribes that has control of, I guess you could say, or like that's the main tribe of the 4 directions, north, south, east, and west. And of course, how do we know that this is a reflection of the directions? We know this from the Parshat Bamidbar, from the book of Numbers, chapter 2, that describes all of the 12 tribes around the Mishkan, the portable tabernacle in the desert, and how they encamped there in the exact same power configuration 42 times. And remember, what's the secret of the universe again? Oh yeah, the number 42. They encamped there 42 times over a period of 40 years from the time they left Mitzrayim, Egypt, until they got into the promised land, the land of Israel, the land of Canaan, 42 times, never varying, always in the exact same configuration, this power configuration. It's our sacred mandala, always Yehuda to the east and Ephraim to the west, always Dan to the north, always Reuven to the south, and the accompanying tribes, they're accompanying tribes in that quadrant. So we're in the northwestern quadrant, which I call Rachel's boys. Why? Because Ephraim and Menashe are the sons of Joseph, who is the first son of Rachel, and Benjamin is the youngest son of Rachel. So these are the quadrants of the zodiac that we're in right now, and it's the seasons, right? So we've gone from, we just had recently the autumnal equinox, and we're going all the way to the winter solstice, which will begin the final quadrant before we get back again to the beginning, to the month of Nissan. So today, of course, as I said, it's our yard site of Rachel, so it's really like a perfect day to be in her quadrant of the zodiac. So that is where we're at. Hold on. Okay, so again, just a really quick overview. Why are we even talking about this? Because in the Shulchan Aruch, it says, the book of Jewish law, one must not inquire of astrologers or consult lots. That's poor, like Purim, right? How do we make of that there are so many astrological motifs depicted in art and artifacts, household items, ritual objects, everything that we have from antiquity until the eve of World War II depicting astrological symbolism. My research, which I've done a lot of, obviously, I got a master's degree in this, is that astrology was a common component in the lives of Jewish communities. It wasn't a big deal, like people did not check their horoscope in the morning before they decided to go out and do whatever they were doing. That's not how they understood astrology, but they had a relationship with astrology. You can see it in these fantastic painted ceilings. Earlier this week, Ellie Shapiro gave a wonderful, wonderful class about the shtetls of Europe, and she gave some pictures of this ceiling, which is a recreation of one of the wooden synagogues of Poland that has a fantastic zodiac all around it. And this is just one of many, many, many examples. So why are we so obsessed with the zodiac? Well, if you think of the zodiac, which of course you have to understand the zodiac is a completely theoretical idea. There's a theoretical geometrical idea that astronomers / astrologers hold by and understand. Of course, until the modern era, there was no differentiation. Astrologers and astronomers were the exact same thing. There was no difference. Of course, in the Great Divorce, that was caused by rationalism. Astronomy was given to the sciences. Science got custody of astronomy, and astronomy's twin, astrology, got relegated to mysticism. So mysticism got custody of astrology, and that's what happened during the big divorce. But you know, I'm trying to bring the parents back together. What can I say? I want people to understand that it's not either or, but it's actually both, okay? So the zodiac that goes around the ecliptic of the Earth, we understand that we are orbiting the sun is in the middle, and all around this solar-centric universe, galaxy, it's not the universe, sorry, our galaxy, which has 88 constellations, and yet we only pay attention to these 12 because each of them correspond with one of the 12 tribes, and it's telling us a story, and it's a reflection of as above, so below. This is the Platonic idea. This is a commonly understood idea, and it's still understood that as above, so below. Below is a reflection of above. And this is an idea that's very common in Judaism, especially in the more mystical and, I'm going to say, more Hasidic understandings of Judaism rather than the rational and Aristotelian understandings and philosophical understandings. So there's that dynamic tension in our Jewish history and culture and understanding between Plato and Aristotle, two nice Jewish boys who weren't Jewish at all, of course. That's just a joke. There's a wonderful poem that is called Keter Malchut that we sing during Yom Kippur. Was written by Ibn Gabriel, who was a Jew born in Saragossa, which is off of Spain, I believe, if I'm not totally wrong about that, in 1021. So he was medieval. And this huge part of it, which is not even like blinked at whatsoever, it's just totally like, it's still sung today, is a total hymn to the zodiac and extolling the virtues and the descriptions of all of the different planets. So this is just another example of how common astrology, astrological symbolism is to us as Jews, and how we just like overlook it. It's there all the time, but it's trying to tell us something. So here we are in Mazal Ekrav, this month of Scorpio. These are some great pictures. This is Scorpio accurately portrayed as an actual scorpion from an amulet from 18th century Germany. Okay, and here is Scorpio also looking just like a little scorpion, although it's sort of a crabby looking scorpion, from a ketubah from Padua, which is in Italy, 1732. So for sure, the Italians knew what scorpions look like because they're Mediterranean people. But here we have Scorpio from a Torah binder in Germany in 1821. So this is really typical of how the scorpion is really a commonly known animal in the Near East, the Middle East, North Africa, obviously, Far East. Everyone knows what a scorpion is, but in the north of Europe, they have no idea what a scorpion is because they weren't indigenous to that area. So lots of times scorpions were drawn as a lizard or a turtle or even a dragon. You tell me what this is. I don't know what it is. It looks like a crazy dragon kite that's flying through the air, but it's definitely not a scorpion. That's an zoologically correct rendition of the scorpion. And that, of course, is a Torah binder that was originally a swaddling cloth made for a young Jewish male to put on his little shmekala after his Brit Milah to bind him up so he could heal good. And on that beautiful piece of cloth was embroidered the month of Cheshvan, and understanding that women in medieval Ashkenaz, the community of medieval Ashkenaz, embroidered these beautiful Torah binder cloths. I'm sorry, they made them into Torah binders after they were they were swaddling cloths for their children. They washed them, laundered them, and gathered them together throughout the entire community that they lived with, and made Torah binders, a dress for the holiest material object that we have in Jewish history. So take that fact and contrast it with people who say, oh, astrology is Asur, it's consulting idols. It's like, there's just like this huge disconnect between the actual lived lives of our ancestors, even up to the edge of World War II, and astrological symbolism, and what we understand about astrology now through the lens of a text-only perspective, which is what you get after you wipe out most of the living Jewish population in World War II. You get a bunch of people who have only to look in books and don't know what the common life and lifestyle was of Jewish communities before the war. Here is a great picture of Scorpio as a dragon, and here's another dragon. This is from the Amsterdam Machzor, also Germany, 1240, and this is from the Michael Machzor, which is a beautifully illustrated prayer book, also from Germany, 1258. These are fanciful portrayals of Scorpio as a dragon, because of course everybody knows that dragons live in North Europe rather than in the Middle East, but actually I think they live everywhere. Here, for all of you turtle fans, is Scorpio portrayed as a turtle. This is from a calendar in a Latin book of Tehillim, or what's called Psalms, or it's called a Psalter, P.S. Psalter, in Latin, and it's a picture of Scorpio, but as it kind of also looks like a cat, but it is supposed to be a turtle. And this is Scorpio from a Hebrew medical text from southern Germany, 1480 to 1500, sometime between these two. So both Jewish and non-Jewish representations of Scorpio as a turtle were also common in Northern Europe. So we get a lot of those. So we talk about Cheshvan, right? Sometimes we say Mar Cheshvan, sometimes we say Ram Cheshvan. Mar means bitter, and Ram means great, or good, great and exalted, high and lifted up. This is a picture of Cheshvan and it says Mar Cheshvan right here. See in Hebrew, Mar Cheshvan. That's from the 5th century synagogue in Sepphoris, the giant floor zodiac there. And here from shul in Romania in the early 1900s, you see it says Ram, right? Ram Cheshvan. This is a picture already. It's showing this bull or bullock, which is one of the symbols of Joseph, because of Joseph is Ephraim and Menashe, and those are Tishrei and Cheshvan. Okay, so Menashe, the tribe of Cheshvan, we have here portrayed as a scattered sheep. That is interesting. That's also another take on the Joseph theme, because it's so interesting how both Ephraim and Menashe, because they're the sons of Joseph, have the Joseph archetypes integrated into them. And of course, that's Venus and Mars. Venus is Tishrei and Ephraim. Mars is Menashe and Cheshvan. This is a little thing of the tribe of Menashe from windows that are in Jerusalem in Zichron Menachem synagogue from the 1990s. So it's a very contemporary view of Joseph's Menashe manifestation, so to speak. This is from a Torah ark in Lithuania that goes around. It's all of the zodiac signs following one another. Menashe is represented by a bull in the field over here. He's described in majesty. He is like a firstborn bull. His horns are the horns of a wild ox. Of course, it's talking about that aspect of Joseph. And then Benjamin over here, which comes after Menashe, after Scorpio, after Cheshvan, comes Kislev, which is Benjamin, right? And that's Sagittarius. And so the tribe of Benjamin here is represented by a wolf. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. So that's the other end of the spectrum of Rachel's boys. And we saw this slide last week when we were talking about Ephraim and Menashe, because they're often portrayed together. Ephraim and Menashe in this beautiful carving. It's at the Bialystoker home, wherever that is. It's somewhere obviously in the Ukraine probably. And tribes of Israel are being portrayed together. Oftentimes the two tribes will be portrayed together. And this is from the Women's Gallery at the Great Synagogue in Bucharest, 1846, Ephraim and Menashe. So these two sort of, one is called a Remaim. I can't even say Remaim, can't say it correctly. But anyway, that's the story with those two boys, right? So Cheshvan, Scorpio, corresponds to the sexual organs in both men and women. This is our favorite friend, our zodiac man. Zodiac man was a figure that was used in medical melothesia, which was the state-of-the-art healing modality that was employed by healers and physicians that understood that each of the body parts had a zodiac sign that was related to it, and that knowledge helped them create cures and remedies according to astrology. They did it at certain times, and they applied it in certain ways that were informed by astrology. So that was an important healing modality up until the age of modern medicine. And the healing was thought to be accompanied by the drawing down of spiritual power using amulets or segulot. And that's why amulets often, almost always, have astrological symbolism on them in one way or another. And of course, amulets are still used. People still use amulets. People make amulets. I myself have made amulets. I think we should have an amulet making class. Anyway, that's the idea of medical melothesia, is that spiritual power is being drawn down by these actual amulets themselves. Cheshvan is symbolized by the combination of letters. You know, we've been talking about this all along. There's the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey and the four-letter unpronounceable name of God. And there's 12 different ways to, 12 different permutations of that holy name. And Cheshvan is Vav, Yud, Hey, Hey. Okay, so it's across from Taurus. It's across from Chodesh Iyar, which is Yud, Hey, Hey, Vav. 12 different ways to arrange these numbers. So this is how the energy comes down through those numbers. Mars is the classical ruling planet of Chodesh Cheshvan and the sign of Scorpio, and Pluto is the modern planetary ruler. So understand again, and we'll talk about this more towards the end when we show the slide that shows how all of the, well, I should just show you that slide because, you know, I like to jump around a little bit. What can I say? So remember that back in the day, there were only the sun and the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Everyone was happy until 1740s when the planet Uranus was discovered. This was very upsetting to people who like to think in symbolic terms. So they had to make a divorce between, they had to choose a planet to split up. So they arranged the planets like this, right? Saturn, the most outermost planet. So they split Saturn's archetype and gave Uranus to Aquarius as the modern ruler, and retained the rulership of Saturn over Capricorn exclusively, but everyone knows that Saturn also rules Aquarius. So Saturn is a co-ruler of Aquarius, but it's a single ruler of Capricorn. Boom, then they discovered Neptune. They did not know what to do. They said, okay, Jupiter, you're next. So they split up Jupiter. Jupiter goes to Sagittarius, but it was the classical ruler of Pisces before. So Neptune is now the modern ruler of Pisces, and the co-ruler, the classical ruler, is Jupiter. Mars, then they had Mars, they discovered Pluto. Pluto was discovered in the 1930s, I think 1930 or 1931, as I recall. I wasn't alive at the time, so we got to Mars. Mars went to Aries as the single ruler, and then the co-ruler of Scorpio is Pluto. So it's Pluto and Mars. And if you're worried about what's going to happen next, The late, great Linda Goodman said the next thing that's going to happen is we're going to discover the planet Vulcan, which is going to be given to Taurus. So you didn't hear it from me. You heard it from Linda Goodman. I'm just quoting her. And I wouldn't be surprised if that happened, okay? So back to this, Mars and Pluto are both the planetary rulers of this month. And of course, Mars also rules Aries and Nissan. You have to understand that Mars was always understood as the planet of din or judgment. The nation of Egypt was judged in Chodesh Nissan, which is ruled by Mars, and the world was judged during Cheshvan by the Mabul, the flood of Noah. This was all during Chodesh Cheshvan. So there is this aspect of judgment. And of course, Mars is Ma'adim, that which turns red, from the Hebrew root Aleph, Daled, Mem. Okay, so there's that aspect of Mars that goes towards destruction in terms of judgment, and you can really see this is manifest in Scorpio's nature, which is to destroy and recreate, is to bring back, is to kill and bring back to life, is to resurrect. This is a function of Scorpio, and remember, everybody has Scorpio in their chart somewhere. Scorpio is the ruler of one of your 12 houses. Pluto, the planetary ruler of Scorpio in modern astrology, is Hades. In mythology, this is the lord of the underworld. He rules over death and has great wealth. Maybe you've heard the term plutocracy. Who lives in a plutocracy? I don't know, people in Russia maybe. Plutocracy is a system of government that is ruled by the wealthy. Maybe we live in a plutocracy. Maybe some people want us to live in one. I don't know. But anyway, Pluto, let's not give Pluto a hard time. It wasn't his fault that he was made the way he was. And he has some very, very interesting, wonderful things that can happen because of Pluto. Because Pluto, you need Pluto. Pluto comes along to like blow things up and change them completely. So Pluto takes the symbolic language of Scorpio's association with death and rebirth, regeneration, resurrection, the essential and ultimate transformation that is the Pluto energy. And Mars is that intense driving energy. And that's sort of how they work together in planetary archetypes. In the Talmud, our favorite passage that we've been looking at every month in Shabbat 156a, again, he who was born under Mars will be a shedder of blood. That sounds like Scorpio, right? And like Aries. Rav Ashi observed either a surgeon, a thief, or a slaughterer, or a circumciser. Rabbah said, I was born under Mars. Abaye retorted, you too inflict punishment and kill. So there's nothing not intense about this permutation of Mars, right? And this is a picture over here from the Sefer Evernote, which is a wonderful medieval document. And here you have the scorpion. It looks just like an alligator, okay? That was pretty crazy. The Talmud attributes a bad-tempered personality to those born on Monday and explains because it has to do with the planet Mars. The astrological reason for associating Monday with strife and anger is because the second day of the week is associated with Mars, ruler of Aries, and the classical ruler of Scorpio. Because the waters were divided on the second day, the forceful energy of Mars creates division. I'll have to remember to bring that up in the Genesis class that we have on Friday. So Mars is associated with bloodshed, and of course, bloodshed has to do with death and rebirth, right? We looked at this slide a little last week. Menashe over here, the Ra'im. This is that one-horned ox that is probably native to that part of the world. So the flag of Menashe is embroidered a wild ox in allusion to that text, and his horns are the horns of a wild ox. The rabbis say this alludes to Gideon, the great judge Gideon, who came from the tribe of Menashe. This is a picture, a very famous Rembrandt picture of Jacob blessing Ephraim and Menashe. Menashe was the natural firstborn son of Joseph in Egypt. He was the older brother to Ephraim. Menashe acted as an interpreter between Joseph, his father, who was disguised as the prime minister of Egypt, remember that, and Joseph's brothers who came to Egypt to buy grain, not recognizing their brother in his disguise as the prime minister of Egypt. So here Menashe reflects Scorpio's power of instinctual understanding and interpretive emotion, and that is very Scorpionic, really to just grok something, to instinctively understand and to be able to interpret it and understand deep secrets, okay? After the exodus from Egypt, what happened, the tribes came into the promised land. The tribe of Menashe settled, it was half and half. They lived, some of them on the east side of the Jordan, some on the west side of the Jordan. Menashe was one of the 10 tribes that was carried away by Sennacherib, and the tribe of Menashe now, there's the name Menashe, which has been recognized by the Israeli rabbinate as being the descendants of the lost tribe of Menashe, and these are Jews from India. They believe that Menashe, when his tribe was carried away, ended up settling in India, and the lost tribe of Menashe is now coming home to Eretz Israel, and there's been a big movement of that. The story again that we went over a bit last week, when Menashe and Ephraim were brought to Jacob to be blessed by Joseph, he arranged them so the normal blessing would be given to the oldest one. Menashe would be given the blessing of the firstborn, but Jacob, by Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, understood that he needed to bless them in opposite ways. So he put his right hand on Ephraim, the younger son, and blessed him with the older son's blessing. And of course, that really confused Joseph. And he was like, no, that's not what you should be doing. And he tried to switch his father's hands from Ephraim's head to Menashe. And Joseph said, no, I know what I'm doing. Don't worry, he'll be a people, meaning Menashe will be a people, he will be great. But his younger brother, which is Ephraim, will be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations. And of course, the prayer that we say to our sons on Friday night, may God make you as Ephraim and Menashe. Ephraim is set before Menashe. Menashe is not the head of that quadrant that we looked at before, it's Ephraim, but one of Menashe's great strengths is that he knows how to bow. He knows how to submit to a higher power, because he's all about power, okay? That Scorpio is all about power and about submitting to the divine will. That's like the highest manifestation, I'm going to say, of Scorpio. So here we have Cheshvan Scorpio. It's ruled by the letter Nun. Last week we talked about the letter Lamed, which is the ruling letter of Tishrei. Now we're on Nun, which is N, right? It's the fixed water sign. Fixed is establishing, water is emotion. Scorpio is establishing emotion. According to the Sefer Yetzirah and pretty much everything else, nobody really has doubt about this, that the body part of Scorpio is the sexual organ of the man and the woman. The function is the regeneration and sexual union, and the senses smell, and this is a really important thing we're going to get into. Of course, the planetary ruler, as I already said, is Mars, and the left Mars. That's according to of course, the Sefer Yetzirah, because they didn't know about Pluto then. We already covered Pluto. And the left eye, and according to Ptolemy, it's the left ear, kidneys, veins, and genitals. That's Ptolemy from Greek 2nd century, kind of the industry standard in Hellenistic astrology. And Cheshvan, interestingly, always has a 2-day Rosh Chodesh, and it's called Bul, B-Bul, B-U-L, or B-O-O-L, if you're going to transliterate it. In Hebrew, Cheshvan is the Aramaic name. It's for Mabul, meaning the flood. This is a famous picture by Gustave Doré, the flood. You see that people are drowning, standing on a rock with animals trying to survive, but of course are all going to be covered up. It said that the letter Mem in the word Mabul is missing from the month's name, and actually Bul means flood, and that the letter M, which preceded it, contains the numerical value of 40, which is of course how long the flood lasted, 40 days and 40 nights. It began on the 17th of Cheshvan, and it stopped raining on the 27th of Kislev, but Noah did not leave the ark until the 27th of Cheshvan of the following year. Sometimes it's called Mar Cheshvan, as we talked about before, Mar or Ram. Mar also means a drop and refers to the first rains, the Yoreh, which fall during Chodesh Cheshvan. And the most important event in Cheshvan was the completion of the construction of Solomon's temple, the first temple. In the month of Bul, in the 8th month from Nissan, the house was completed. Of course, they're talking about the house of God, the house that Solomon built, Shlomo's temple. According to the Midrash, the third or Messianic temple will be rededicated during this month, the month of Cheshvan. So it's one of those hidden holidays. We don't celebrate it yet because we don't know what day it's going to happen, but the rededication of the third temple is destined to happen during, or promised. It's like God promised Cheshvan, I've ripped you off in a lot of ways. You had to really bow and let your younger brother have ascendancy over you, but I'm going to give you all sorts of good stuff if you're patient, like a good Scorpio. The future third temple is symbolized in the Hebrew word for the sign of Scorpio, Akrab, which spells out the word Ikar Bet for essential house, because Ikar is like, what's the essence? And of course, essence has to do with smell, the attribute of Cheshvan. For the house that will never be destroyed. And the flood is also hinted at in this word as Oker Bayit, destroys the house being the human body. So I want to bring a very interesting thing that I'm sure I'm not going to pronounce right. Nana Karobi Ya Oki. It's a Japanese proverb, which means if you fall down 7 times, stand up 8. Fall down 7 times, stand up 8. Proverbs 24:16, for a righteous man falls 7 times and rises up again, but the wicked stumble on adversity. This is Nun. It's the secret of Nun. We make a really big deal about Nun in Judaism. Why? In the Ashrei prayer that we recite every day and on Shabbos, it's an acrostic. It goes through the whole Aleph Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, etc., but we skip Nun. Nun, we don't have that verse. We don't have a verse for Nun in the Ashrei because we don't want to say the word. We don't want to use Nun because it has to do with falling. It's the Hebrew word for nifal, to fall. We don't want to say ever that we're falling. And of course, there's the prayer that the fallen sukkah of David, meaning the house of David, the house of Mashiach, should be rebuilt. So we're very adverse to falling, and we let the letter Samech pick it up after Nun. We don't say Nun, but we sing Samech Adonai, Samech Hashem L'chol Hanoflim. God supports those who fall, okay? So also Nun with a numerical value of 50 in this context refers to the 50 gates of impurity, so that's why we don't say it. So there's 50 gates of Kedusha, which is holiness, and 50 gates of impurity, which is the opposite of holiness. Nun is the numerical equivalent of 50. This is very much having to do with Scorpio extremism. Scorpio is the ultimate high or the ultimate low, the ultimate holiness or the ultimate depravity. Nun, the letter Nun, indicates how it can really go either way with Scorpio. Scorpios can be the most passionate, selfless, amazing, self-sacrificial people in the world, and they can be like the worst, most horrible people in the world, okay? There's almost no in-between with Scorpio. They don't know what it is to moderate or to be moderate. They're the opposite of Libra, which is Venus, which is balance. Scorpios are not balanced. There's nothing to do with balance in Scorpio. It's all about extremes. Here again is the letter Nun, the regular Nun, and this is the final Nun. You see how it gets straightened out? So of course, you know that there's certain letters that have final forms, and Nun is one of them. So this is, Nun is considered to be the letter of Mashiach. So as a verb root, Nun means to reign, as in to rule and reign, and as a noun, it means the heir to the throne. So Cheshvan is understood as the 8th month, as Ram Cheshvan, as exalted Cheshvan, as high and lifted up Cheshvan. The 8th month is the month of Mashiach, and this is also one of the hidden secrets of Cheshvan. It signifies the eternal revelation of the supernatural. And of course, Scorpio is related to the supernatural. People think Scorpios are scary because, you know, Scorpio is the month that rules death and rebirth. So it's scary to some people, but if you understand that if death is a door to the great unknown and that Scorpio holds the secrets to the great unknown, then you have to get to be friends with Scorpio, okay? The source of the 50 gates of holiness. Remember I just said the 50 gates of impurity? We don't want to think about those now. We want to think about the 50 gates of holiness, Neshama. Nun is 50, and Shema means her name. Neshama may also be taken to mean breath, right? Because God breathed the breath of life into Ha'adam, the human, the primal human. It's bound up in the nose. The nose is so interesting. The sense of smell is the most spiritual of all the senses. It's said in our tradition that's a sense of smell, like during the fall, when after Adam and Eve ate the apple and were expelled from the garden, the classical fall, all of our senses were degraded. We used to be able to see forever. Now we can only see what's right in front of our face. You know, all of them were degraded in some way except for the sense of smell. And it's very interesting if you've ever known anybody who, been around people who have dementia or Alzheimer's or memory loss or whatever, smell completely bypasses the cerebral cortex and goes right into the memory. Like, people remember things from smell. That brings back memories to them. I have a particular smell that I don't even know what it is, but it has to do with my grandmother's jewelry box that used to smell a certain way. I think it has probably the smell of dust and felt together. I don't know what it is, but I know that if I ever smell it, immediately I look around and I just see my grandmother's jewelry box. Also cigars. I'm not a cigar smoker. I would never smoke a cigar. But if I smell a cigar, walking down the street, I smell it, immediately I stop and look for my grandfather, Papa Dave of blessed memory, who was a big cigar smoker. And I know each and every one of you probably have a story like that about a smell that will just smell, will trigger memory. The sense of smell is connected to the soul's intuition. Scorpio is the most intuitive of all of the zodiac signs. And wherever you have Scorpio in your chart, by house or by planet, is where your very strong intuition is. And Moshiach, otherwise known as the Messiah, will use the sense of smell to judge the righteous from the wicked. Like, Mashiach is thought of to actually just smell us. Like, there won't be any talking. It won't be like, Your Honor, I've come to tell you a whole story of my life. I was raised a poor child in Mississippi or whatever. You can't say anything. Mashiach there's nothing to say. Mashiach will smell you and judge by what is smelled. Okay, and this is from the Haftorah of the last day of Pesach, says about Mashiach in Isaiah. He will smell the fear of God. He won't judge by the sight of his eyes, by the hearing of his ears. He'll be judged by the ability to smell the soul. And even in the Talmud, there's a story about how the rabbis used this as a test to see if Bar Kokhba was the Mashiach. Maybe they should have done that before the big revolt that killed all these people, when they said he was Mashiach. I think a person should be tested for Mashiach by the sense of smell before they get a lot of people killed and not after, but that's just me. Anyway, that's a classical idea there about Mashiach and the sense of smell, both of those being related to Scorpio's instinct okay? Let's see. Okay, so this is more about Cheshvan and Mar-Cheshvan. I want to talk, because it's already 12:48 already, I want to also take questions. This is the glyph for Scorpio. It looks a lot like the glyph we looked at for Virgo, only instead of going inside, it goes outside with its tail up. It's like this M, like it looks a lot like Virgo, but with a tail that represents the stinger of the scorpion. It's also could look like genitals if you're a man, or maybe a very stylized with that like little arrow thing if you're a woman. This is fixed water, as we said before, establishing emotion. The archetype of Scorpio is the magician, the shaman, the detective, the healer, and the shadow is the vampire, okay? That's a classical Scorpio trope there. Scorpio strives for security and power. Scorpio is all about depths and extremes. Scorpio despises the mediocre, despises the superficial. I mean, despise is a really strong word because Scorpios have extremely strong emotions. Scorpio is drawn to explore everything that's concealed, secretive, suppressed, the taboos of society, and all of the extreme emotions. Scorpio can possess immense powers of the soul that can be used for the benefit of others, like being amazing healers. The responsibility of immense power is crucial for this sign to learn, or it can become a destructive energy. So like what we spoke about before, intense Scorpios, if they're not developed, they can be very, very dangerous. Scorpio is the natural ruler of the 8th house in astrology. This is James Bond as the modern Scorpio. This is, of course, my favorite James Bond, the only James Bond as far as I'm concerned. Sean Connery, he should live and be well. Mysterious, sexy, dangerous, oblique, secretive, passionate, and intense. And everybody knows this little story about the frog and the Scorpio, right? The frog is on one side of a stream, wants to get to the other side. The scorpion offers to give him a ride on his back. But no, you'll sting me, says the frog. Why would I do that? We would both drown, said the scorpion. So the frog jumps on the scorpion's back and halfway across the stream stings the frog. Why, cries out the frog as he's dying and drowning and falling into the water. Sorry, says the scorpion, it's my nature. This is like the quintessential Scorpio story about itself, that they are compelled, Scorpio is compelled to obey its nature, even if its nature ends up being self-destructive. They can be passionate, which can also be controlling. They can be persistent, which can also be obsessive. And remember, we talked about Virgo and Scorpio looking alike in their glyphs. They're also obsessive in a different way. Virgo and Scorpio are both precise and obsessive, but in different kind of manifestations. Scorpios are also mysterious and secretive. They can be loyal or they can be vengeful. Nothing is more vengeful than a Scorpio. You do not ever want to make somebody with, let's say, a Mars in Scorpio really mad. They are fearlessly curious and also morbid. They can be ardent, which can also be possessive, dedicated, which could be jealous, faithful, or distrustful, intriguing, or deceitful. No other zodiac sign has a greater potential for soaring to ultimate heights or descending into ultimate depths. Some of the alternate archetypes for Scorpio include the gray beetle and the eagle and the phoenix. Some believe that the eagle and the phoenix are just two sides of one coin, but the phoenix is the bird that rises from its own ashes, destroys itself in the fires of self-immolation, and then rises anew and beautiful and recreated. As we've said many times, everyone has all 12 zodiac signs in their natal chart. Scorpio is motivated by the impulse to discover the depths and heights of any given thing, the intense urge for intimate connection, knowing something from the most intimate inside way possible. Scorpios get very triggered by deceit and the selfish use of power. And of course, Mars, Scorpio, is opposite Venus, Taurus in the zodiac. So if you see over here, Scorpio, Mars, opposite Venus, Taurus. And twins, right, or not twins, but brothers with this version of Venus, Libra, which is Tishrei and Ephraim. We're in the cycle of sacred time. Why does my horoscope say I'm a Scorpio when I was born during Tishrei or Kislev? Because solar Scorpio, which is when the sun transits Scorpio on the ecliptic, this artificial construct of 360 degrees divided by 30 degrees, the sun goes through solar Scorpio between, why does this say October 12th? This is totally a typo. I meant 21st, sorry, depending on where you are in the world. And of course, Cheshvan starts on any day that is within Cheshvan's purview, depending on where we are in the 19-year Metonic cycle. So like this year, you can see that Cheshvan is on October 19th through November 17th. But let's look at Cheshvan 5777 in 2016, started on November 2nd and ended on December 1st, meaning that a whole bunch of people were born when the sun was already in Sagittarius, but it was still Cheshvan. So somebody might be a Cheshvan Sagittarius or a Cheshvan Scorpio. It just depends. You have to like really know. And how do you know? You have to look up your Hebrew birthday and your English birthday. And that's the easiest thing in the world. So one thing we've been doing in this class is using the natal chart of the United States for an example of Scorpio in a natal chart, like the natal chart of America, as if America was an actual person. Scorpio is the ruler of the 12th house because America has Sagittarius rising. So Scorpio is the 12th house ruler. The 12th house rules the unconscious, the subconscious mind, dreams, mysticism, sacrifice, secrets, withdrawal from the world, isolation, seclusion, everything that has to do with dissolving. Like, so it's the opposite of Saturn, right? It's the modern ruler of the 12th house is Neptune, which has to do with dissolving. But America's 12th house is ruled by Mars or Pluto or both in Scorpio. There are no planets in Scorpio in America's 12th house. I don't know why that says 6th house, sorry. But so I'm looking at Scorpio in the 12th house as America's secrets. I'm going to say it's Area 51, something like that. Like all the secrets that America has is in the 12th house in Scorpio. Everything is very hidden. Everything destructive is really hidden because out in front where we are, and like the whole world looks at us as like, yay, yeah, we're really nice, but we've got a lot of secrets, possibly destructive. Also a lot of repressed sexuality. This is Puritan America. You know, the Puritans really set the tone for how sexuality is portrayed in America. It's not European or Middle Eastern, that's for sure. It's definitely American. And this is about repression. And Scorpio in the 12th house is about repressed sexuality. So that energy gets redirected into military might and being very, very assertive and or aggressive. Okay, so let's see if we're, yeah, so I'm gonna stop the share now. It's 12:57, I talked a lot. Hi everybody, there's probably questions that I didn't get. So anybody can talk and ask me questions. Oh, you can't help wondering what Trump's chart looked like. He has a Leo rising. I've been doing his chart. Julia wanted to know what Trump's chart looks like. We're going to talk about Trump's chart next time we meet on this series because we're going to be talking about Kislev, which is a sign of Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is where, first let me say I'm a Sag, and I'm going to tell you right now that Sag is the best sign. But I will also tell you that Trump was born on eclipse. His sun is in Gemini. His moon is in Sagittarius at 23 degrees. And next month, on the 14th of December, 2020, that is when the 14th of December is going to be an eclipse at 23 degrees Sagittarius. It's the parenthetical solar eclipse to the lunar eclipse that Donald Trump was born on in June 1946. So in June 1946, it was this end of the parentheses, and on December 14th is the other end of the parentheses. And then parentheses enclose something. I hope you're all listening closely. because next time we meet, we're going to either laugh or cry about this. And you know, if it wasn't Trump and I was just talking to somebody about their chart, I would say this means that somebody is exiting. They came in at this sign and they're exiting at this sign, whatever that means. It also happens that the 14th of December just so happens to be the day that the Electoral College meets. Electoral College meets on that day. So whatever happens with the election isn't important. What happens is really what's going to happen on the 14th of December. He's either going to be in or he's going to be out, but we probably won't know till then. So it's not a sprint. Okay, it's the opposite of a sprint. What is it called when we're not sprinting? We're going for the long haul. It's a long distance run. So don't get too burnt out, kids. Who else wants to ask a question? You can just raise your hand or speak out, unmute yourself.
Really quick question.
Hi, Mark.
Is there ever a 13th sign?
Yes, I love that you're going to say that. So there's a 13th month, and we're going to talk about that a little bit next month because we're going to talk about Jupiter and Jupiter's co-ruler of Pisces. But you know that there's a Adar Aleph and Adar Bet, Adar 1 and Adar 2 every few years. In the 19-year Metonic cycle, there's 7 leap years. So 7 out of 19 years, we get a second Adar. And the secret of the second Adar is so deep that we're going to have 2 sessions on Adar before we finish this great series. We'll talk about Adar 1 and Adar 2, but I'll just give you the big preview is that remember how Joseph had to be divided into Ephraim and Menashe. It ends up that the secret of the second Adar is that Joseph, is that month belongs to Joseph. Because Joseph is everyone and he's no one. He's completely effaced, and at the same time he's completely full. And it's a very, very wonderful and mysterious teaching that we'll get into in further classes. But that's the insight on that. I hope that answers your question. So yeah, there's a 13th Hebrew month. There is, but there's not a 13th solar month. Questions, answers? Let me check the chat because I haven't looked at it. Amy says, the repressed sexuality of America also makes me wonder if that's why the people in power politically cannot let the abortion issue just be. Yeah, that and the patriarchy, because that's like a big deal. But yeah, so it's interesting that Linda Goodman used to talk about this too, about how Elvis, remember how Elvis came into, this happened during, was it Pluto and Scorpio, I guess. Was it Pluto and Scorpio? No, it was Pluto and Virgo. It was Pluto and Virgo because Virgo was like the virgin. That's what she said, but it was, Elvis was like this emblem of this repressed sexuality that shocked America. And that's, teenagers loved him, and like the older people didn't love him because he was too sexual. And that freaked out like the Puritanism of America. So yeah.
Plus he was taking religious songs and turning them into sexed up pop songs. So that was, the older people are like, that's the wrong thing to do. But on the other hand, now we have, what is it, the Nation Patriot Church. It's in the news.
Right. There's so many reasons why this country is messed up from the beginning, and there's also so many reasons why it's such a wonderful, wonderful country, and that we're so incredibly lucky. You know, it's both. It's not either or. I think it's and. Sarah Leah Mazel Tov Grafstein said or commented, first heard about flipping Mar Cheshvan to Ram Cheshvan from Reb Shlomo of blessed, his memory should be for a blessing and a healing, as our friend Barry Barkin likes to say. And actually I showed a slide at the beginning that had Mar Cheshvan from, I guess, medieval times. So it's been used both. I think that Shlomo definitely probably resurrected it and brought it back more. I know I heard about it the first time from Shlomo Hefer in Israel for sure. So anybody have any other questions? Wait, what happened?
I'm not sure. I just wanted to say it's interesting that Shlomo's yurt site is
right.
in Cheshvan.
True.
So it's like, to me, it's like Shlomo has turned Mar Cheshvan into Rum Cheshvan. And it's interesting also in the Kol Chevras, they never say Mar Cheshvan or Cheshvan. It's always Rum Cheshvan for the last 20 whatever years. Moon has been doing that. So it's like a whole Chevra.
Sorry, you're going
refers to it as Chevra like that. It's wonderful that they use that, for a tikkun. It's beautiful.
It is
going in and out.
You're better now. It is a tikkun, and I want to say that it's also, interesting to reflect that some of the things that make us feel a little bit ambivalent about someone we really loved, whose music and Torah we really loved, Reb Shlomo Carlebach. There's also a very scorpionic, secretive thing that a lot of people don't want to talk about or feel uncomfortable talk about, which is the accusations against him regarding his lack of boundaries in the sexual area. And that's a very scorpionic topic. So I think that what I want to say about that is, just like the month of Cheshvan has hidden secrets in it that will be revealed in Mashiach times, so too things that we don't understand about people that make us feel ambivalent or upset, or maybe have even harmed us in some way, will have a bigger and better capacity to understand everything, even the things that we've been hurt by in Mashiach times. And maybe Mashiach times can be now if we have a Mashiach state of mind and try to understand ourselves and other people in a much bigger context than a smaller context. Hi, Jesse, did you want to ask a question?
Can I just say amen to that?
I wanted to say something. We just talked about the repressed sexuality of America. Then we talked about Shlomo. There seems to be an uncanny connection between sexuality and spirituality that we have to know about too.
Thank you for saying that, because it's said that about a person's yetzer, meaning his or her energy or life force, his chi, the thing that compels him. There's the yetzer ra, which means bad, and the yetzer tov, which means good. But there's also just yetzer, and that's what Mars energy is. That is Mars energy, is just pure yetzer, and it's how you use it, tov or ra. And it's also said that the bigger a tzaddik, the bigger a person is spiritually, the more they have a yetzer. It's proportional. Little spiritual people have little yetzers, and the big spiritual people have big yetzers. And of course, we've all seen in our own lifetime, and we've heard tales. This is obviously, sexuality is the holiest thing. Anybody who's ever had sexual union with somebody that they love knows that it's the highest of the high. And why we also know that it could be the most depraved and unholy thing in the world when, for instance, God forbid, if somebody forces sexual union on somebody who's unwilling, that's the worst violence that can be done that way, and everything in between. It has everything to do with intimacy, and our intimacy is the holy of holies. It's our most sacred thing that we have. So Mark said cult leaders all have huge sexuality issues, right? Because they have tremendous charisma. Everybody knows that people who have tremendous charisma have powerful sexual powers or urges or whatever, but unless it is modulated and in service of what's the highest, it can become very corrupt. It can hurt a person, God forbid. It could hurt other people, God forbid, and frequently does. And that's why you hear stories of people who have, strong spiritual power, so to speak, making terrible errors. And it's just I just want to emphasize that it's really a sacred energy, and that when we treat it like that, we're less likely to abuse it, but it's also so easy to abuse. And Scorpio, the function of Scorpio, like every one of the 12 signs has a function. We need that. We need that intimate connection, like we need holiness. Gloria, did you have a question?
It's not a question. It's just to add on that charisma can also be very confusing.
Yes.
And you might not remember that Reb Shlomo was single very long. He didn't marry until very late. I remember him in the early days.
Yes, I don't know exactly how old he was when he got married, but I know he didn't marry as a very young.
He was late.
Right, and that's unusual in Hasidic communities, because why do they want to get their children together and married as soon as they hit puberty? Because they understand the power of sexuality, and they want to channel it into a place that will be safe for the children, for themselves, for society, for the creation of more and more souls, etc. So, you know, there's a certain practical wisdom that all the societies had until the invention of something called romance, which was an artificial invention, and Professor Feynman has written and spoken much about this, but it was something that is modern, that made people delay marriage for a long time. And so in the olden days, people used to, as soon as their kids hit puberty, would get them to be engaged and married, because people didn't live to 90, 100 years old so much. People's lifespan, their procreation span, people died in childbirth. It was messy, and Baruch Hashem, we don't live in those days anymore. But it also creates a problem because we have something called teenagers now. Teenagers used to be yeah, so we have people who are not allowed to have sex, but they're sexual. They're incredibly sexual. They have strong, powerful sexual urges, and they don't know what to do with them.
How about even when you're over 90?
Baruch Hashem, looking forward to sex when I'm 90.
Yes.
Sex is regenerative, right? It brings you back to recreating. It gives you that recreation energy, and that's the ideal. I mean, that's what everybody wants. Hopefully, I bless you all that you should have great sex, and me too, if that day ever comes again.
Meanwhile, I've never really been involved in that kind of activity.
What?
I've never actually been involved in that kind of activity, simply because I'm autistic and I find it very hard to find something. It's always been hard to find